I did, I turned it off again. Okay. So, yes, it's your fault. Yes. So, huh? Your fault personally. You're in charge of the video from now on, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask in German.
Okay. Okay, so anyway, so creating a new class. Now I'm looking at that file, and that file contains a list of expenses. So what does it make sense to call the class? Expense, right? Because it represents the expense for a single thing. Call it whatever you like, right? This is the whole thing of encapsulation. You look at the data, you look at the problem you're trying to solve, and you make classes to represent the things in your system. So I'm going to call it expense. Click on add. So then it says, so first thing we do is put the word public here, okay? So now, next thing I have to make some fields and properties. So let's take another look at the format of this file. The first thing is the name, then the political party, the constituency, the amount returned, and the amount claimed. So let's do this, right? So the name, what should that be? String, right? The next thing then is the political party, isn't it? Next thing then, constituency. S-T-I-T-U-E-N-C-Y. Is that the way you spell it?
It's the T after the S.
Constit. What am I missing?
T after the S.
There?
Constituent.
Serious?
It's a word file.
Okay. Alright, that's the next thing. And then the next thing, so the next thing we have to put in, so we've got the constituency, then you have the amount returned, amount claimed. What should we make those? Let's make them floats, right? At a later date, we'll spend a little bit of time thinking about why that should not be a float. Because there's actually a type specifically for dealing with currency information in C#, and it's better than a float. Huh? No, double's not good either. We'll talk about it in a couple of weeks, huh?
Is it decimal?
It's decimal, yeah. Yeah, decimal is better than a float. The reason why is because floats lose precision. So sometimes you'll add a whole lot of floats up together and it should reach 10, but you'll find it's actually 9.999. Does that happen to you? Have you ever come across that? So I'll explain why that happens in programming. But for this one here, a float will do the job nicely. So we have received, and then, what was the other one?
Claimed.
Claimed.
Returned claimed.
Okay, so we'll get back to, so we've got received, returned. So there's returned, claimed, and
Total.
yeah, hang on a second now, let's think about total for a second here. If you read this here, what it says here is that
It's a read only.
it's a read-only property. So distinguish between a property and a field. A field is some variable in your program. A property is something with a get and set. Do you understand the difference between a field and a property? Okay, so a field is something that you declare. It's something which is intrinsic to it. A property, similarly, looks from the outside as if it's the same as a field, but we know that that's something with a get and set. Now, it's impossible to have the total. The total has to be equal to the amount claimed minus amount returned. So it doesn't make sense to make a variable for the total. Just make a property for it. In the same way, like a circle. Remember when we did the circle one? We just made the circumference and area. So anyway, first thing I'm going to make properties for each one of these. So I tap refactor, click on encapsulate field, and it makes me this. If you don't have that option in Visual Studio, you can type it. Right? It just saves you a little bit of typing. So I'm going to do the same thing, refactor, encapsulate field for that. Refactor, encapsulate field for this one. Refactor, encapsulate field for this. Refactor, encapsulate field for that. Now we're going to make a read-only property for the total. Public float total. Yeah, and my read-only property, I just need to put a get for that. So from the outside, that I just return claimed minus returned. Okay, that's that bit done. Next thing it said is a default constructor. Remembering a constructor is always the same name as the class, and it doesn't have a return type. So this was called expense. And a sensible thing to do in the constructor would maybe to initialize all those to some default value or not, right? So name equals double quotes like this. Hang on a sec, just change this. What's that? Yeah, that will do fine as well. Don't need to. We use this to disambiguate. If you've got a parameter name and you have a field name, then you can use this.name to disambiguate. Either name or this.name will work fine. Similarly, you can go, just to show you can go this.party equals that. So either one of these will do fine. Party or this dot will do fine. It's only if you need to disambiguate.
When you talk about default constructor, is that a constructor that has no parameters?
Yes. Sorry, yes, that's a constructor that takes no parameters. Oh yeah, this dot return should be 0, yeah? And again, you know, you don't need this. I don't like to use this unless I need to use it. If I need to use it to disambiguate, that's when I use it. But otherwise I just, you know, for me I look at that and I say, yeah, these must be fields. So returned, claimed, equals 0.0f. What else did I miss? Constituency. Constituent, you can see, equals the empty string like that. Okay. Total is calculated, and then it lasts a two-string method. All right, so two-string methods always look exactly the same. Public, override, string, because it always returns a string, two-string. So that's what it looks like. And what we do is we return a string representation of this. So I'm going to return the name, followed by, for the hell of it, because I'm going to use this later on when I do my printing. So I'm going to print the tab character after that. So the name, the constituency, you can put commas, you can put whatever you want here. But because I'm going to print this thing later, tab separated, I might as well make the two-string return and separating the tabs. So we've got name, constituency, party, then oops, plus /t.
Brian.
Yep.
I've got a question.
Yep.
You know in Java, when you do like a two-string, you don't need to specify the two-string when you print the thing. You can just say H or whatever the name of it. And do you need to specify the two-string?
No, it's the same. This comes straight from Java. This was in Java first, and then C# robbed it.
What kind of problem would it have to specify the two-string?
Nope. I'll show you now. So we got party claimed, returned. Thank you. Finally, plus total with an uppercase T, because total is a property. Alright, that's part 1 completed. 25 marks. Next thing. Is that okay with everybody? Anybody want to ask me any questions on that? Yeah.
Do you use properties for all the ones you don't need to?
Yes, for now, I think it's good to just start doing it. It doesn't matter, you get full marks even if you do. But it says in the question to make properties. And no, it's like, yeah, make properties. You won't lose marks, don't worry, okay? But yeah, you should make properties. Did anyone read that article about why properties are bad in C# that I linked to? Okay, go and read it. Okay? In your program, but this is what we're making here is what I would describe as the term in programming is a canonical class. This is the way the book says you should make a class. And you're going to see lots of people who develop classes like this. When you get loads of, open source libraries and stuff, they'll be written like this. That's what they'll look like. So you should get into the habit of knowing what all those things mean. So in your program class, declare a static array of type expense class you created in part 1. Okay, let's do that first of all. So it says in your program class, here's my program class program, a static array. Static, it's of type expense. Okay, that's my static array declared in the program class. Okay, everyone happy with that? Okay, write a static method, static void load expenses, pass in the file name. It should load the file and parse it into the array of expense objects you declared. Okay, so let's copy this code here straight away, because I know that that's what it needs to look like. So here is my static method called load expenses, and I pass in the file name here. And then I give you this piece of code here, which actually goes and reads all of the whole file into a string array, where each line, and you can see that is loading the whole file line by line into this string array. So now I have a string array where each line of the file is an element in this string array.
Do you need to rename the file name to actually expenses?
Yeah, well I'm going to call it and pass in the file name. Alternatively, yeah, you can hard code it, but the point is that you can pass it in as a parameter to the method.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to go through this and I need to create a new expense object for every line in the file. So, two ways to do this. I'm going to use the kind of C# way. For each... Oh, hang on. Let's not do it this way, actually. Now I'm just thinking we should probably use a for loop for this, because I need the I to the side. For int I equals 0, semicolon I is less than lines dot length. Is it length? Yep. Semicolon I plus plus. Oh, hang on. There's a couple of things we need to do here. I'm just thinking. When we do this static expense array, this declares the array, but it doesn't actually allocate any memory for it. So this is like just a pointer in C++, in C that you would have done in first year. First thing I need to do is, once I know how many lines are in the file, I then need to allocate some memory for it. So expenses equals new expense object, and then pass in lines dot length. So what am I doing there? I'm basically creating an array which has the same number of elements as there are lines in the file. That makes sense? Alternatively, you can just make a big array up here and allocate it and say, well, there's 500 lines in the file, and just declare it like that. I don't mind. But this is kind of a nice way to do it, because now my array is exactly the same size as there are lines in the file. Okay. And then what I need to do is create a new expense object and put it into the array at the appropriate position. So expense E equals new expense. E dot name, can use the property, is equals to... Oh, hang on a sec. Yeah, of course. We have a line. I now need to separate the line into different fields based on the tab character. So the next thing, let's do this. String... What do they call it in my solution? Not that it matters.
A words.
Yep, that'll do fine. A words just means an array of words. No, I didn't even. Let's just do string bits, because I can't think of a better name for it. String bits equals lines dot split. Yeah, you're dead right. Lines I dot split. And I wanted to split on the, split open brackets. I wanted to split it on the tab character. So that takes a single line and it splits it into, separates it based on the tab, okay? So then I have my name is the first bit. Bit is a really terrible name because bit means like a bit. What should I call it instead?
Misty.
Part.
Parts, right? Part. Part array. So it's equal to part at position 0. So that's the 0th element of that array that gets back, and I'll just copy and paste it.
You not do it in one line.
How did you do it in one line? I did do it in one line, yeah. But how did you do it in one line?
So you pass an array, and then the 0 element would be the first part of the in the file, and then the second part of the file. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but I need to create the expense object from each of these. So then the next thing I have is, how's the file separated again? Let's take a quick look at it here. So I have party, constituency, amount returned, amount claimed. So the second bit is the party. Then the third bit of that thing is the constituency.
Yeah.
Then we have the amount claimed. Okay, and for this one, I need to take this string and convert it to a float. So if you remember how to convert that, you use float.parse, part 0. Sorry, it's not part 0, it's part 3. So I have to convert it to a float. And then returned, part 4. So it's amount returned, amount claimed. Sorry, I have them in the wrong order. party, yeah, constituency, part 3, part 4. So that's it all, okay? And then the last thing I need to do is put it into the expenses array. So my array is expenses at the position I is equals to the thing that I just made, which is E. Alright, so that's me parsing that string into an array of expense objects.
You need to initialize expenses first, like the array will that will have been created, but will have been initialized to like default to the empty string and stuff. Because I did it at home, I get across with that I had to put it for loop and
Initialize it.
initialize it.
No, you shouldn't. No, what will happen is, it's interesting. What you get in C#, what happens when you go expenses equals new expenses, that creates the array for you. But you need to create each element in the array separately by doing this expense E equals new expense. If you start trying to print this thing out, you'll get null reference exceptions because the array is being created, but the items in the array haven't been created. Show me your code if you have it, or I'll have a look at it anyway. But no, you don't. You shouldn't need to initialize it. Yeah. Did you have this line, did you? Okay, I think this should work, but we'll just run it and make sure that it works, okay? Maybe we can have a look at your code and just see, because there might be something that you didn't do or did differently, right? So, makes sense at this point, now that I have this bit of the program working, that I don't continue and do the next bit. I test the bit that I've already written to make sure that it works. So load, expenses, and the file is called expenses. Expenses.txt. Yeah, that's the file name. Okay, so there's my program written to this point. I think it's probably okay. So what I'm going to do is just set a breakpoint here. And then I'll hit F5, run my program in the debugger. If it reaches this point without throwing any errors, it means that everything has probably worked okay. But just to be on the safe side, what I can do is hover over expenses and see first of all that it's got 168 elements in the array, and then see that it's actually created. And you can see here what it's actually doing is calling the toString in order to even generate this thing. See that? It's calling the toString method. You know, because that's the IDE calling the toString method to represent the object as a string. Is that okay with everybody? I'll show. Okay, so out of that. Okay, never mind. Well, is there anything you want me to maybe just go through or explain, or a problem that you might have had that maybe you tried to do something differently, got some errors? I'll show you something, right? Just some common problems you might have. If you just declare your array like that and you don't bother actually, you know, going equals new expense thing, I'm going to show you what you get if you don't do that. So let's just click on the play button there. Now we get a null reference exception. And we get a null reference exception because this expenses object, which is the array, it's initialized to be null. So there's no space actually allocated to hold that array at this point until you go expense equals new expense. So that's like in C, if you just go like int star I, and then you try and start putting stuff into int star I by the contents of I equals whatever, it's a null reference at this point because I haven't actually allocated any memory for it. When you go equals new expense, that actually goes and allocates the amount of memory required to store an array of those objects. Yeah, so that's the line there maybe you're missing. Alternatively, you can just put it up here, you know, equals new expense, and then I know that there's 168 lines in the file, so that will do fine. This is kind of more flexible because first of all it reads the file, figures out how many elements are in the file, and then goes and allocates the array. Okay, so that's that loaded. So then the next bit, let's see, where are we now? We are on. Jeez, we're running out of time here, so I'll fly through this really quickly, right? Yeah, okay, so part 3, write a static method, print party. So I'll just copy this here. Okay, so this has to do loads. First of all, this has to just print out all the expenses for a particular party. This is an easy problem. What I need to do is go through each of the expenses array items and see if one of them matches this party object. And if it does, then I need to print it out. Okay? So let's do, we use a for each for this one. I think that should work. Oh no, hang on, for each won't work here either as well, because we need to remember which is the minimum and which is the maximum one as well. So here's how I did this one. Okay, float. The minimum min exp, I'm going to call it, is going to be equal to float dot max value, and then my maximum expenses float dot min value. So I'm setting these two variables to maximum value. The minimum is currently equal to the maximum possible value for a float. The maximum is equal to the minimum possible value for a float. And then I need to remember the index as well. Min index is equals to, doesn't really matter here. And then I also need to keep track of what's the total. Thank you. So I'm going to start that out as being equals to 0. Okay. So now, for int I equals 0, semicolon I is less than expenses dot length, semicolon I plus plus. Now what I need to do is check to see if the current expense object that I'm iterating through at position I dot party is equals to the party that the person passed in as a parameter. By the way, this will be up on your website as well, but I think it's good if you're typing it in as I'm going along as well, okay? So if the party matches, what do? I print it. And rather coolly, I can use the toString method here because everything's already formatted by the toString method. Expenses at position I. And there's your question there. Do you need to actually explicitly call the toString? No, it's called implicitly for you there, just by printing the element. And then the total plus equals to that particular value, expenses at position I. Now I need to check the minimum and maximum thing as well, right? So if it's a match here, so I check to see if the expenses object at position I dot amount claimed total, isn't that it? If the total is greater than the minimum, the total so far, which is the max expenses, greater than the max, then I need to remember the index. Expenses I. And then I need to do the same thing for the minimum.
There we have total expenses plus equal expenses I. Do you not need to put in?
Yeah, you're dead right, sorry. Total, right. So if the expenses are less than the minimum, then I remember where it is. Min index is equal to that, and the min exp is equal to expenses I dot total. So what I've just done there is I've just checked, and I'm remembering where the minimum was, and of course this is going to get updated as I iterate through. And then finally, I need to print out some stuff. And then I'll just show you this. You know what? Because I have the solution here, I might just open up the solution, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I wouldn't mind just showing you what the full solution looks like. Is that okay with everybody? You can see where I'm going with it, right? But I'll open up the solution because I already have one here. And I'll just show you the last few bits of it. But you can see how I kind of approached that and how I kind of went through the list step by step. And hopefully you can see how I went about solving the problem. So the first thing, there's my load expenses file. And here's the end of that bit, right? Oh yeah, so I added one extra thing to this, even though I set a Boolean flag here for found equals to false. Because if you type in a party and it doesn't find it, you've got to print out the string party not found. Alright, so I put a Boolean flag, and as soon as I come across one match, I set found equals to be true. See that? And then down here I check to see if found, I print the total value. Total claim for party was total. Minimum claim for party was expenses at min index dot total. and then I print out the person's name, and then the max indexed on total, and then down here in the main method, while true, I print enter the name of a party or quit to quit. So I read the party from the console, and then I check to see if it's equal to the string quit, I write, otherwise I call the method print expenses and pass in the party string. So that's all 4 parts. Is that okay with everybody? So did you see how, yeah? No, but I'm going to put it on web courses, I just haven't got around to it. What I'm actually thinking, you guys use GitHub with Brian thingy, don't you? Do you guys use GitHub?
No.
Oh, great. Another cool thing you gotta learn. GitHub is fantastic. It's just the best. It's like a debugger for programmers. It's something that I personally would find, now that I use it regularly, I find it really, really hard not to, as a programmer, it's just awesome. So I'm going to start, what I'll do is I'll put, and I'm just thinking instead of putting these as zip files that you download, what I'm going to do is make one Visual Studio project. I'll put it up on GitHub and I'll give you instructions to clone the repository. But it'll have every program that we've worked in, and I'll just add to it every week. So you get one solution with like about 50 different programs in it, and you can see it growing every week. So I'll do that over the weekend. I'll show you how to get it on Monday. But yeah, definitely this will be made available for you. Okay? Okay. Let's leave it at that then.
Is there any chance that you could put this just up on webcourse until we get set up just so
No problem.
I'd like to
No worries. I'll do it today.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll do it after this class, right? I'll do it before 5 o'clock today, so I have a load of classes to do. You can have a look at it then over the weekend, right?
Yeah.
I'll do it full time solution and get it to
Exactly.
next week. So it'll just save you downloading programs week by week.
Right, GitHub